Rick, welcome to the Dear Lovejoy podcast. Thank you very much for joining me in my kitchen. I've got your present. Hold on. I didn't get it out. Hold on. That's not how it should start.
Okay, no worries. Oh my word. Hey,
I usually get people wine, but I've got you a beer because I know
Fantastic.
you like.
Yeah, brilliant.
You like beer, and
I do indeed.
And I saw this beer, and
Fantastic.
I gave one of these to Frank Turner, I think, as well when he came
brilliant. Thank you very much.
on. And it's just a big bottle of beer. So,
Great,
what's your connection with alcohol? Beer. You're opening a.
My
bar,
connection with alcohol, yeah. No, what happened was, I'm just going to make a really not big loud noise with that and get that out of the way. Right. My wife is from Denmark, Copenhagen, and there's a Danish brewer called Mikkeller. And Mikkel, the guy who kind of started it and everything, it turns out was a bit of a fan of mine when he was a kid. He didn't tell us that, by the way, up until way later. So He gets in touch and he says, look, I'd love to make a beer for Rick. So basically, we went through this whole thing about him designing a beer for me telling him all the things I like, and going out drinking beer together, and him sending me beers to, because I don't know the first thing about brewing beer.
Yeah.
And I don't see it as like a major business proposition. It was just a fun thing to get involved with. So so we went to Belgium at one point, which is, they brew there quite a bit. They brew in America. They brew in lots of places. And we went on a bit of an adventure, and he designed this beer for me. And it's been a great thing. I have them at home in the fridge, and when, if guys and girls come round to watch the football, everyone gets one of my beers, an Astley's Northern Hop beer.
Aren't you? What's the? How do you describe it? What are the notes?
It's got a tiny bit of ginger in it, because obviously
nice.
That was my daughter's of suggestion at one point. And it's just a regular beer that you can drink, like a Pilsner beer that you'd want to drink. Do you know what I mean? It's nothing something. What I didn't want, because they do make some really unusual beers, which we kind of laugh and joke about it when I'm talking with them, because it does get a bit nerdy, that world.
Yeah.
But I think anything that people have a real love of, you can get nerdy. Do you know what I mean? And that's, I don't know, one of the things I've likened it to is it's a bit like being around musicians. I've said this a few times, because they really get into it, and they get into the absolute detail of it, which is probably lost on me a little bit. But like I say, he went about making the beer for me in a very practical way, which is working out the beers I like and working out what the things were in it that were turning me on.
I was just looking up there because I wanted to find out what it was called, because I've tried it a few times. Do you know Iron Maiden have their own beer?
They do. I've got some of that at home as well.
It's called the Trooper beer or something.
Yeah,
isn't it?
I've got some at home.
My mate works on it. And,
right.
They're making a lot of money out of it.
I'm sure they are. I mean, but
it's like proper money out of it.
Yeah,
but
they do so well, I think, with all their merchandising. Do you know what I mean? Never mind, it's a bit of it's an empire, isn't it? Their thing. That music's been around for that long, and their fans are that loyal that I think they've made it into something else almost. So but we're actually, sorry, just to finish the beer thing, we're opening a bar in Shoreditch. Yeah. And it's kind of, obviously, it's a Mikkeller bar, don't get me wrong. It's not my bar, but I'm involved, and I'm happy to be involved, and it's an adventure, like I say. It's only a small place. It's in Shoreditch. We're going to open it in October. And it's just something nice to take your eye off doing what you do. You know what I mean? It's a different project to get involved in. So yeah, it's good.
Are you expecting to make money out of that?
I don't know. If someone sends me a check at some point, that'd be great. But I'm not, it's that age-old thing, isn't it? Pop star, footballer, whatever, opens bar, opens nightclub, what have you, disaster. So I'm not interested in that. I really love doing the beer thing with them, because, like I say, because it is something I don't really know their world, and it's nice to just dip your toe in something else.
Yeah.
And we've been to a bunch of their bars. Like when we finished playing in Tokyo last summer, one of their bars put a bit of a night on for us, and it's great to have an association with a beer company around the world. You can kind of say, hey, can we come and hang out at one of the bars?
So what's the bar called then?
The bar in London is just going to be called Mikkeller. Because I didn't want it to be associated with me in terms of name-wise, because I don't think that's... Longevity-wise, I don't think that's a great idea either. Do you know what I mean? And also, this is their first bar in London, so I think it's kind of important that is the stamp of it. You know what I mean?
I think it's good you've done a... Do you say you've just done a Pilsner?
Well, we've done a new beer.
Oh, have you?
They've just done their festival. They have a festival now in Copenhagen, and they partner up with a couple of different bands and different people, and a huge restaurateur up there and everything. And they have it's quite a big thing. I'm trying to think who played the headlined. It'll come to me in a minute.
Okay.
But really big bands, and so they brew a beer for the festival every year, and I tasted that one, and it was like super drinkable. Nothing, because they have some. I mean, one of my favourites actually, but it's kind of out there. It's coffee and raspberry.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to drink 2 pints of it, and I've told them that. You know, but if you have it like an aperitif, if you have it like a drink before you start drinking other beer, it's really nice.
So I went to a beer festival in Stavanger up in Norway.
Oh yeah, wow, I've been up there, yeah.
And it's kind of. My mate invited me, he had something to do with it, and we were going around tasting the beers, and to begin with, he goes, this is interesting, it's like chocolate flavoured or something like that. After about 3 or 4 of them, because you only have a little bit, she's like, this is just so hard to drink, all these beers. Yeah. The sour beers, I mean, I don't know how people get their head around those.
I mean, that was tough for me, and then gradually now I've got used to
Really?
it. Yeah. Honestly,
disgusting.
I liken it to the first time you drink any kind of alcohol when you're a kid, and when somebody gives you've just got used to beer, and then someone gives you a glass of like pretty strong red wine or something. It's like that isn't going to happen for a while. I'm not going to get into that, but you grow to love it, and it's the same. Yeah.
My brother took me for my first beer. I was 14 or 15, my older brother, and he made me drink bitter because he said there's no bubbles in it, so you won't be sick. That was his theory.
Yeah, well, we used to drink mild, which I think you can get down south, but we used to drink pints of mild, and if we were going out on a proper night out and we needed to get in the mood, we'd drop a Pernod and Black in it, which is a heavy-duty drink. Yeah, I wouldn't want to drink
one of those now. When I was at that beer festival, we all ended up at the end at the Pilsner bit, where someone, because it's just so hard to drink those flavoured beers after a while. It's just like, oh Christ, they're just. It's not like a session beer, is it?
Well, even the guys at Mikkeller, they will say that one even's just a bit much. That's nobody. There are people who drink beers to prove they can drink. A bit like the chili thing. You know, people get so far down that road that it's like, whoa, this is just ridiculous. And I think any world can get like that, and the beer thing does do that. And when we were in Brussels one night with them, we went to this amazing bar that they took us to that's got like just a huge list of all these things, and they're picking things out for us to drink and everything. And then they looked at one and they said, no, we're not going to drink that. That's just... Yeah, so they're honest enough to say that's just nonsense. Do you know what I mean? So
you talked about being young there. I can't imagine you having a childhood before you were famous. Because you seem to be, it was 21, wasn't it? When you saw
21 the first record.
What happened before 21? I mean, look, before, let's not go into the Stockholm Waterman stuff. Before that, did you identify as anything? Were you a mod or a punk or a skin?
I wasn't either of those things. I mean, when I was about 14, 15, I had a biker leather jacket because my brothers both had motorbikes, and I had really long hair. Did you? And I mean, AC/DC, Highway to Hell, is one of my all-time favourite albums because I learned to play drums to it, and that band are amazing. Full stop, just full stop. But the clarity of the decision making of the riffs and what they play, from drums right the way through to, Angus Young and all the rest of it, it's pretty amazing. And fair enough, maybe the producers got a lot to do with that as well. But they've never really changed that thing that much, really. You know what I mean? You know it's their record straight away. Yeah. But from a drums point of view, it's just spot on.
But did no one ever say, you're dressed as a schoolboy? What? You're going to do that the whole of your career, dressed as a school? How did that ever stay for that? Like, it's just unbelievable.
I think it's weird, isn't it? I think when you look back at any time in your life, if you do it and it's obviously not a public thing, it's not so bad because you can just look at photographs or even home films and what I've been looking at and go, it's just that a lot of mine are on YouTube. Do you know what I mean? My kind of from 21 onwards. Yeah.
It's funny though, isn't it, when bands choose an image like that? Like Boomtown Rats had Johnny Fingers, who was in pajamas.
Yeah. That was odd. I do remember. Yeah, I remember that.
You made that decision, and then the rest of your career you're going, oh Christ, I got to wear pajamas.
Yeah, but top of the pops. I remember.
You had to make an impact, I suppose.
Yeah, I've got an older sister, 2 older brothers, so I was influenced a lot by them and with the music that they loved and everything. That's really what I grew up with. And I remember seeing Roxy Music one time on Top of the Pops, and I think the drummer is in like he's like dressed like a caveman in a skin, if you like, and like Brian Ferry's in his American military sort of uniform. Various members, Brian Eno just looked strange anyway. Do you know what I mean? I remember just looking at them and bands like that in the 70s where that whole image has always been massively important in music. Of course it has. But in the 70s, on Top of the Pops, it was almost like people were going, what are you going to wear on Top of the Pops? How mad are you going to look? Do you know what I mean? And then you've got people like Elton, obviously, who then pushed that just to the extreme. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. I think in certain ways, the 80s, again, had some amazing fashion things in it, for sure. And I think at the end of the 80s, it all got a bit safer, I think, really.
Yeah.
Hence the blazer and the striped T-shirt.
Well, yeah, talking about your fashion, but it's bizarre because you look back now and you go, yeah, you were just wearing a raincoat and you were wearing a blazer and a striped T-shirt and stuff. But I was doing the London club scene sort of around that time. I just started, and that was height of fashion. Did you have a stylist?
No, frighteningly,
really?
no.
We all had quiff. Seriously, so
No,
we all had quiff haircuts. We were all wearing blazers. It was kind of Henley Regatta, yuppie type, but that's what we were all wearing.
I think that had also filtered through to me. Let's say from let's say ABC for one, and even bands. Roddy Frame had a proper quiff. I seem to remember.
Yeah.
Aztec Camera. There was a lot of quiffs. I mean, the Smiths. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
The quiff of all time, and I think. Call it preppy, call it whatever you want to call it. I mean, I used to go to a couple of clubs in the north, near where I'm from, a little town called Newtley Willows, but we'd go to clubs, Wigan in particular for one. Not Northern Soul, by the way, it was after that, but they played a lot of soul music sometimes. And we used to dress up and we'd put jackets and ties on. We thought that was normal.
Yeah.
We actually danced in lines as well to soul music, like
really?
Luther Vandross and a bit earlier and a bit, and we all got dressed up for that. And people did travel a bit. It was before like raves and stuff when people really traveled.
Yeah.
People would go to a certain club because a DJ would play, not underground, but sort of lesser known, not mainstream top 40 soul sort of stuff. Like Luther Vandross before he became really famous, if you like. Do you know what I mean? And stuff like that. And we loved all that. And dressing up was... dressing up, but dressing you was part of it.
Sort of rare groovy type stuff.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah, but it wasn't probably even as cool as that. It was just...
We used to wear the jackets, the oversized jackets, which you would sort of wear, and the zoot suit trousers.
Yeah, but
and then the kipper ties and
stuff.
Yeah,
but I also loved a guy called David Sylvian from Japan, and I loved his style and everything. So I had those massive big trousers, which was really helpful one time because I got knocked off my bike and my leg turned into this massive, great big ballooned up whatever, but I could still get the trousers on, so that was quite handy. So I think clothes have always been important for teenagers. You know, whether you're in a band or not, it doesn't matter. You want to dress and make your statement, don't you? You know? And ironically, my statement was a bit of an understatement in a way, but it is funny. The stripy T-shirt has made a massive comeback in the past 10 years. You know? And,
Well, I have a real problem at the moment. I keep saying this with the music industry, and I'm going to level this at you as well. There's too many solo artists. And when I was a kid, you were a good solo artist, but you were in a band as well. So I could buy into the whole image of the gang of any description, men and women, whatever it was. Now it just seems solo artist after solo artist comes along, and I'm not. Where is the next great band, or are they just not existing?
I think one of the things is because people can literally get a laptop and make a record in the bedroom. Then that's probably given birth to somebody saying, "Well, I'll just do it," and then they put the vocal on, thinking, "Well, I'll find a singer one day," and then find that they can actually sing a bit themselves, and then do you know what I mean? And or maybe they're amazing singers, and they go the other way, and they go, well, how am I going to find some musicians? They go, well, I'll just make it happen. And before they know what they're doing, they're making really great tracks. A friend of ours' son, he wanted to get a vocalist. This is in America. He wanted to get a vocalist on his tracks that he was doing for college and what have you, because he's studying music. And in the end, he thought, I'll do it myself. And he ran out of time, so he did it in his car. He recorded it in his car in the university car park, basically. And I listened to it and I thought, it sounds great.
Okay, well, I've got a question for you then. Is the music industry a better place now then?
I think there's always good and bad in every decade, in every facet, and every movement of the music business, because the idea that someone therefore can record vocals in a car into a laptop, make it sound pretty good, and then put that up on Soundcloud or whatever it is, or even get it on Spotify, and put it out there. All right, 1 million other kids can do that, but at least you can do that. We couldn't do that. If we wanted to get noticed, we had to play in pubs and then eventually try and get an A&R man to see us. Because even we knew that sending a cassette, we all did it, but we all knew that they'd get cassettes and put them straight in the bin. You had to have a connection to somebody. And now you can kind of put yourself out there and somebody might find you. I'm pretty sure, or I hope they do, but I'm pretty sure record labels have got people looking actively, just flicking around on YouTube and SoundCloud and kind of going, what's out there, you know what I mean? And probably having Sunday lunch with family members, and kids are probably saying, oh, well, I like this kid called, what's his name? Do you know what I mean? And finding it that way. So I think that's amazing. The fact that kids can do
when
much more.
When I made my first show reel, or when I made show reels when I was a kid, I used to have to. I always forget this. I used to have to hire a cameraman, but then I had to hire a sound man because they didn't do both.
No,
right?
of course not.
So you needed a sound man as well.
Yeah.
And then after I'd got all the raw material, I'd have to then go to an edit suite. And get them to edit. It costs a fortune, so I'd had to work to save up enough money.
Yeah.
So
It's amazing. I didn't know you did anything like that. It's incredible that you took that on yourself to do that.
I used to pretend I worked for Cable London because no one knew what it was.
Oh, right.
Because cable had come over here, like the internet.
Right.
No one knows what it is. Like this podcast, no one knows what it is. Right. So people just go, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
No, so I just used to walk around going, hey, I work for Cable London. Can I come and do some film premiere and interview celebrities by doing that?
Wow, amazing.
I'm just standing there because
incredible.
people used to think cable, oh, it must be good.
Yeah.
And
It's the future.
Yeah, and because I turn up with the cameraman and stuff, they'd go, oh yeah, let them in, sort of
That's
thing.
amazing.
Because obviously it costs money to hire a cameraman. So
they knew that you're doing it for real.
Well, I didn't look like I was a phony, but it didn't.
It didn't look like it. Yeah.
It didn't look like it.
It was made of cornflakes, the camera box. Exactly cornflakes box.
So when you started, you were a drummer, and then how did you get from? Because you're saying you can't just go and make music. You need to end up with a studio and everything. Years ago. How did you go from drummer in bands to solo artist?
I guess I started to write a few songs. I borrowed a guitar from one of the guys in the band, took it home. He taught me a couple of chords, basic stuff, and I just kind of noodled around and I wrote some really basic, naive songs, took them into rehearsals, practice with the band, and I was kind of sort of nominated, but also nominated myself to be the singer, I guess, because I'd written these songs, and it was a bit like in my key as well, suited my voice, and so I just became the singer, really. I started singing more songs that way. We bought a little drum machine. So we did a couple of things, and we entered a battle of bands where I drummed and sang, and then we had a drum machine. One of the very
Phil Collins.
Sorry, well,
Phil Collins.
I've still got it. I've still got the drum machine. It's called the Dr. 55. Get in. And it's oh my god, it's amazing. Anyway, I remember actually we did a battle of the bands in St Helens. And one of the other bands had come over to the drum machine and put the tempo up to as high as it'd go. So when we all cool, we came out onto the stage, and I pressed go, it went like that. So a bit of sabotage going on.
You invented acid house.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then,
what were you called then? What was the band called?
Well, we were called FBI. The first group I was in from school days was called Give Way, and that was because Jeff, the bass player, had pinched a Give Way sign and thought and then we stuck that in front of my drum kit, and we just thought that was a bit,
that's brilliant,
bit tough, So FBI we won a couple of battle of the bands, and ironically, Pete Waterman judged one of them, and he came really to see us do a showcase with a couple of other bands, and he liked my voice, and he thought I can do something with him, but I don't really want to work with the band, and he was upfront about that. And I was kind of like, well, I'm not so sure I want to do that. And, I was really into being in the band. But after, I don't know, 6, 7 months, whatever it was, I just decided that I'd perhaps go down to London and see what he had, on offer. And so that's what I did. And I signed a deal with Pete in the end.
They always say you were the T-boy. Were you the
Well,
T-boy?
no, I signed to make records.
Right.
But it was just in that period where they were working on Princess's album. I think she had a #1 with the first song called Say On Me #1.
Yeah.
So it all just went mad. Then they did the Dead or Alive, You Spin Me Round, and that album, and that went #1. And so all of a sudden, loads of people were asking them to make records. A lot of labels in London were looking at them as the new sort of pop producer, new kids on the block kind of thing. So I, as a signed artist to their production company, just got pushed to the back, which was fine. But it was like, oh, okay. So then Pete, wisely, I think, kind of said, look, he's just going to lose the plot. We'll get him down to London. We'll just get him at the studio, and he'll just hang out and do stuff. And that's what I did with a bunch of other kids. There were a lot of other guys and girls my age. We were called tape-ops in those days, because you set up the tape machine in the morning, you reset the desk, you did all of that nonsense, which now is a touch of a button. But it was great, because I made tea for Dead or Alive. And I got the sandwiches in for Bananarama and got their tea. And it was pretty amazing, because also I got to go to the pub with Stock Aitken Waterman at night, and I was allowed to sit with them and the engineers. A lot of the juniors weren't, because they were having like business conversations and talking about, different projects and stuff. But because I was a signed artist, and I was living at Pete's flat half the time as well, I'd come in to work with him some mornings. It was amazing. I was party to certain conversations about music and producing records, and probably a little bit about the business as well, that I would have never got the opportunity to earwig to. Do you know what I mean? Because it It was just them having a pint after work and chatting, you know. So that was pretty amazing.
Are you still mates with him, Pete Warman?
I see Pete. I probably see him 2 or 3 times a year. He'll kind of get in touch and say, "I'm coming to a gig," so you know, yeah.
He's quite an amazing guy, isn't he?
Is, yeah.
But I've never met him.
Right.
He always just comes. He's one of those guys I've never met in the industry, but he's comes across really well on TV. I think people like to knock him, but he just seems really just animated and excited about
he's
life.
definitely animated. Yeah, he is. The thing with him is, if he wouldn't have been there, that it wouldn't have worked. He wasn't the musician, let's say. Stock and Aitken are pretty amazing musicians.
Right.
The knowledge of chords and the way to put things together, and you know, someone had mentioned a song from Motown or from whatever, and they go, "Oh, well, that's a," and they'd already know what the chord structure was.
Yeah.
They'd played in loads of like hotel bands, if you like, and done that their whole apprenticeship. You know what I mean? So they were really good at that. And what Pete was amazing at was actually having the overview, saying, "We need a record like this, and the title should be this, but we need it to have a bit all this percussive stuff that's going on. That's what's going to make it a hit." So then they would take that and they'd turn it into a record.
Yeah.
But he would then walk in and he'd kind of say, "That's not what we're talking. That's not it." And they go, "What do you mean that's not it? It's great." And he'd go, "No, it's not." And he would do that. He'd kind of not. He'd sort of get in their faces a little bit about, "You've missed the plot. It's great, but it's not what's going to be a hit." So he was a true A&R man in that sense. You know what I mean?
They had hit after
Monster.
hit after hit. It
Crazy.
just didn't stop, did it?
Yeah.
It just kept rolling on. It must have been an amazing thing to be around at that time.
It was, and
especially as you knew you were sitting in the wings.
Well,
about
also,
to...
I didn't realise what it was, because you just think, well, maybe lots of studios are like this. And it's only having been in quite a few studios since those days that you realise 75% of the records being made in this place aren't going to even see the light of day. And in their building, almost everyone was a top 5 record. It's a pretty weird place to be in that respect, you know. But it was amazing. And also it did obviously give me a massive, massive door opener that Stock Aitken Waterman produced my first records, because DJs just went, "Great, bring him in."
Yeah.
They didn't question it. They just went, "This is the new Stock Aitken Waterman artist. He looks 11, but just wait till you hear the record," and and off they went. And so I think we got a lot of radio play. I think it's a good record, that. I mean, I can say that because I didn't produce it or write it. It's a good pop record, I think. It ticks all the boxes. But I also think the fact that they did it really helped in the very early days just to get it on the radio.
And your voice is unique.
Thank you, my love.
But it is an unusual voice, isn't it? It's not. It's very soulful on a pop song, but it's not a classic voice that you would hear. It's different.
Yeah, it is different. But I think, again, one of the things that, you know, they weren't that particularly bothered. I mean, I'm saying that, you'd have to ask them, but I think they did feel they could make a record with almost anyone.
Right.
You know, and I think they kind of sometimes were a bit worried about. I know they were, because it came up in conversation, not with me. I kind of found this out later. They were a bit worried that we recorded "Never Gonna Give You Up" in '86. We only released it in the summer of '87.
Right. Because
they were a bit worried. They wouldn't give it to RCA. RCA kept
Why?
bugging them, saying, "We need to hear this record. We want to put the thing out." And they were just like, "I'm not sure it works, because he just doesn't." Because I looked about 11, you know, with my striped t-shirts and my blazers, which are all my clothes. But I didn't sound like that. And I think they were a bit nervous of, what are people going to think of this? When they see him in a video, what are people going to think? And ironically, a lot of people kind of got into the record and bought into the record before they ever saw me, because I kind of only went on top of the pops. I think we were already in the chart, I think we definitely were in the chart. Yeah, obviously you had to be, I guess. But I mean, there wasn't a video. We only made the video in the week I went to #1. So we were 3 weeks on the chart before we made a video.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I don't think a lot of people had seen me. They might have seen me on a news program.
So so the reason why they were not sure about releasing it was what you looked like,
and the way I sounded. That
and the way you sounded, because it didn't work.
If I sounded
like
if I had more of a, let's say, a genteel voice and it was a bit higher pitched, that perhaps would have worked with perhaps the way I looked. But I think they were just a bit.
Yeah.
And I've only heard these kind of rumours and conversations afterwards from people in the building.
Let's just go back to '86 then, when Pete phones you up and says, or speaks. You said, "Right, it's your turn now. Here's the song."
Yeah.
What actually happened? I mean, that must have been amazing.
Well, funnily enough, they just bought a thing called a Fairlight, which was back in the early days of computer music. Was this monstrously expensive, huge, big deal thing that they bought. You know, like Trevor Horn would have had one. Various other really big producers might have had one. But it was, I don't know what, so you could have bought like 5 terraced houses up north for the price of it. You know what I mean? It was crazy. And I helped take it out of the boxes, take it downstairs into one of the basement programming rooms. Well, it wasn't, it became a programming room, because they hired in a guy called Ian Kerno, who's an amazing player and instrumentalist, just really clever guy. And Mike Stock sat down with Ian and said, look, these are the chords, this is the melody, it's called Never Gonna Give You Up, this is roughly how it goes. Give me some stuff, give me some ideas, I'd like some string or whatever. So then Ian spent a couple of days. So I went and got coffee, obviously, and biscuits for Ian, sandwiches, kept him fully pumped up, and he created that song. And I just keep popping in and listening to it and thinking, this might be my first single. It was weird. It was kind of a weird...
And then, but then Pete said, this is your single, did he?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I knew it was. I mean, I knew
right.
it, yeah. And, but I knew them. I knew Matt and Mike and Pete as Matt, Mike and Pete. I made tea for them. I knew what sandwiches they liked. I'd been in the building for months. So it wasn't like people have this thing. And certain artists, obviously, perhaps even a Kylie or a Jason or what have you, especially because of the fact they came from Australia and they had TV careers, probably did sort of come in with a brief moment of time and recorded a song and then went off and did what they did. You know what I mean? I'm not saying just them, I'm saying anybody.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
and that's very true today of artists anyway. But I was kind of there. I was just hanging out.
But was it their biggest song? It's one of the biggest songs. It went.
One of Kylie's might have been bigger for sure,
look,
but I think it
number
probably
one
is.
in 24 countries.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think the main thing being is that America was one of those countries,
America.
and therefore that kind of changed the. I mean, that just changes the game when you have a hit there.
So were there other artists getting hits in America?
I don't think a lot of the records made it there, really. No, I mean Kylie's not in America; she can go and do gigs there and stuff. I know she can, but I don't know whether many of the Stock Aitken Walkman things crossed over really.
You won the best British single at the BPI, which is now called the Brits, didn't you?
Yeah.
And I got all this off the internet. I love it. But
must be true then.
You played in front of you played live or you sung it on the stuff, whatever you did. You know. You were watched by an audience of 100 million, they reckon.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, yeah. A lot of that stuff.
Mean, it's brilliant, isn't it?
But again, a lot of that stuff, you just kind of raise your eyebrows and go, because what are you supposed to do with that information anyway? Do you know what I mean? You're either on live telly or you're not, and whether there's 1 million or 100 million watching, it does change. But it's a bit like. It's like, how do you even imagine 100 million people?
Yeah, but you're 21. You've got a number one hit in 24 countries.
Yeah, it's nuts. It is.
And America being one of them. And I assume you've got a good enough deal that you're making some cash out of it.
Yeah.
So you become a millionaire.
Yeah.
It must be a pretty big thing for a 21-year-old kid who's been making tea and coffee around a studio to
it was kind of ridiculous, to be honest. I mean, I remember even when I got my first advance, which was, 10, 15 grand, 20 grand, whatever it was. Even that was a lot of money. We're talking back in the late 80s. That was like, okay, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But obviously having those hits, I knew the money was going to be coming. But ironically, I didn't really have any time to sort of be around anywhere to spend the money.
Yeah.
I literally was busy every day promoting a record somewhere. And that's no bad thing in a way, because I actually sat down. I went back up to Warrington, which is, a few miles away from where I live or where I was from. And I went to see the bank manager, and he just basically went into his office. I mean, who gets to go in a bank manager's office when you're 21, 22? And I went in there, and he said, I just want to go through a few things with you, Mr. Astley. No one ever called me Mr. Astley. And he kind of explained how much money I had in the bank, and he said, it's not the best idea that all of this money is just in this account.
In the current account.
And so obviously we started looking into that, but it was weird. And it was also weird because none of my friends were in that position. None of my family were in that position, anywhere near it. So it's a bit weird that all of a sudden you've got this money and you want to do things with people that you love and care about. But it's a bit weird because it's like you want to pay for things, but everyone's got a bit of pride. No one wants to say, yeah, great, you just pay for everything. But then you're thinking, well, yeah, but we can just go and do that. But you don't want to be naive enough to think that that's not going to maybe be a bit of an arsey thing to do or upset anybody. You know what I mean? So it is a bit of a... But I used to just try and just say to, friends that I'd had for years and all this of it, look, I know you do exactly the same thing. Yeah. So let's just go and do this thing. Because, and also, I know it's a real, but it's almost like you're doing me a favour. I need to be with my friends. I need to hang out and go skiing or whatever it is. Just do something where I'm with my mates and we just try and forget about that for a moment. And just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I go and do it on my own, where's the pleasure in that?
Life changes though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because when you get money and you get fame, I mean, I've never had the money and the fame you've had, but even in my small bit, sometimes I'm aware I turn up to things and I'm ruining it for everyone because suddenly I become the sort of people want to come and talk to me, and the person who's it's actually there for,
they do,
it's their due, and so you become conscious of it, don't
for
you?
sure,
And also you end up with a bit more money. It's TV money, so it's not the rock and roll money at all. But you end up going away and going, oh, well, I've got a bigger budget than you have, but we'll go down to your budget.
Right.
That's that sort of thing. It's I know people listening to this won't have any sympathy, but it's quite a weird thing to get at 21, isn't it?
It is.
And I didn't get mine till late 30s.
Right,
so,
I think it is, and I wouldn't swap it. I wouldn't change it for a thing. You know what I mean? One of the things I'm more than happy to say is how grateful I am for the fact that I made money in music. I know you should say it's just about the music, and it is basically about the music, but I think making money from it has also given me a lot of freedom, even to do what I do now, for instance, with the last couple of records.
And to retire for a while.
Well, yeah, exactly. But that in its own way is like a sort of, it's just, all we want, I think, in life is a bit of choice.
Yeah.
We're all happy to do some work for it. We're all happy to do whatever. But if we could just get a bit more freedom and choice, that's what we're all. That's the ultimate thing I think most people do is goes, well, when I've got the time, when I've got a bit more money and a bit more time, I'll do X. And I was able to do a lot of that in my late 20s because in my 30s because I had the time and I had the money.
What did you do?
I wish I had an amazing story, but I don't. I built a studio after about a year of not doing a whole lot, and just we had a young daughter, and I just wanted to just do nothing. To be honest, I wanted to sit on the couch and eat biscuits. You know what I mean, and watch telly and do a load of stuff that I hadn't done for 5 years.
Right.
I'm not moaning, or I don't want any sympathy for it. But what I did for 5 years was so intense; it was just crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Your industry is sort of the complete opposite to the football industry, isn't it? They're making all their money now, and all the guys back in the 80s and stuff. They make good money, but not they do.
Yeah.
Your career, you were the 80s and 90s.
You sold records.
Unbelievable amount of money was
Sold
made,
records.
wasn't it? And it's really interesting, actually. The money made out of recording music was a very short-lived period because it started with those. What were those old-fashioned things called before records?
Vinyls, you mean?
No. Before those, you could buy. I want to call them soap something or something. Whatever. They were like the things, music that people would have, and people would sell sheet music, and they'll sell the things.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
Whatever those were called. Then
like pins would play the music because it was printed.
They would have that. That was the first sort of, I suppose, way that people would buy music. Then it went into something else, and then it went into vinyl, and there was lots of money. Then obviously cassettes and all that sort of stuff. It was the 80s and 90s it happened, but it was only about 100-year period that people actually bought music and spent a lot of money on it, right?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
And now it's sort of back
before
that it was live, and now it's back to live.
Yeah, for sure. But I also think, ironically, I've said ironically a few times today, I think. I do think that if you look at Spotify, it's an unusual business model, if you like, for certain people to get their head around, but it does make a lot of sense. In the way that I'm not saying not everybody obviously subscribes to something like Apple Music, Spotify, whatever it is, one of the options. But if somebody does, and let's say just ballpark, they're paying £10 a month. Yeah. Just ballpark. They are equivalently spending £120 a month without thinking about it.
A year.
I don't. Sorry, a year. So £10 a month, £120. Yeah. I don't think. I don't think a lot of people would have bought 10 or 12 CDs a year. Yeah. They probably would have bought 4 or 5. Good point. Or whatever. Yeah. And they would have gone, am I going to buy that? Oh, I don't know. You know what I mean? And I know you've got access to almost every bit of music out there because you're streaming, and people seem okay and quite happy to do that because they are getting everything. Yeah. They can just come home and go, I want to listen to Bob Dylan. Yeah. I want to listen to Bob Marley. I want to listen to anybody with a bob. I want to listen to, whatever. And just anything is up there. And also I think for a lot of people, it's quite a nice thing to go, I really love this playlist because it's kind of, it does it for me. And whoever's curated it has made it really suits me. And if you find a few of those, you can start to trust that.
You're right, yeah.
And on the one hand, it does get my goat a little bit because you're kind of going, look, there's a billion songs on there. Spread your wings a bit. But I'm a bit the same sometimes. I think, you know what? I'm in the mood. Come on, and I'll put my favourite records on. Like it could be
AC/DC.
Could be AC/DC. Do you know what I mean? So I know exactly what it is I want to play. But sometimes I just want to go, just play me some great rock or whatever it is, and just see what comes because it might be something that I'm not aware of.
And I suppose what we've done is we've thought about the millions, the hundreds of millions, the tens of millions that artists earn. I suppose they're still earning money. It's just come down a lot, in comparison to what it used to be.
Yeah,
maybe.
but you see, I should work for one of these things, to be honest, because
Streaming.
if you buy a CD, listen, there's all sort of ways you can, look at it.
Yeah.
But if you buy a CD, you've bought that CD and that is it. And all right, if it gets played on the radio or gets in a movie or a TV, it will generate some more money because there's rights to it, if you like. But if you've got it on one of these streaming services for the next 50 years, every time somebody plays it, there is some money generated. It's a tiny, tiny whisper of money. But over 50, 60 years, if it's a song that consistently does keep cropping up, it might make more money than the £10 that somebody buys for the CD, or the 10% because there's 10 songs on there, let's say.
Yeah.
It gets complicated.
Yeah.
All I'm trying to get at is that it's progress. Things are going to move anyway. So why fight it? Why find the positives?
Well, that's interesting because I remember Fergal Sharkey spending his whole life going on TV and radio going, the music industry's dying.
Right.
Stop everybody. Stop Napster. Stop everything. He kept doing that, didn't he? He's going, there will be no music, which I always thought, God bless Fergal Sharkey, but I always thought that's the most ridiculous statement ever. There'll be no music. As long as there's music. As long as there's as long as you look cool standing on stage with a guitar or sitting behind a keyboard or playing some decks or something, you will get music.
Yeah.
People love it, and people want to make art. And
I don't think any generation since the internet and all the rest of it has ever been less in love with music. They just go about it in a different way, and they go about the way they find it. You know what I mean? They're just as passionate about whoever, who's doing whatever, whatever kind of genre of music is the new thing that,
And I'm really sadly turned in because I listen to a lot of podcasts. So when I listen to music, I want to hear hits now. Not hits, but music I know. And I've turned into my daughters. I've got twin 16-year-old daughters.
Right.
And they only ever they've never listened to an album in their life. It's single after single after single after single. And that's the way they do it. Yeah. And I wonder if that's going to change the way bands tour in the end. And
also the way the
happens,
bands think about... in fact, on your show, there was Harvey.
Yeah.
And I seem to remember he hadn't made an album yet. And he was kind of... we did meet up, by the way, at the festival a couple of weeks later.
Did you?
Yeah, we managed to see each other. I didn't see his set, but because he was on the other side, and it was timing-wise. But, and I remember thinking, if somebody of that, that age and coming through in the way that he's done it and everything, you think, is it worth him making an album? Does that make any sense to the people that he's, around?
It's really split now when we get artists on. We talk to some of them are just doing single, and some of them want to do a body of work. And they think it's really important to do a body of work, but still, I think their major hits will be the stuff people will stream.
But again, maybe we're kind of viewing it with rose-coloured spectacles in the sense that there were certain periods of time where albums went a bit rubbish.
Yeah.
There were 3 or 4 great songs on it, and the rest of it was just cannon fodder just to fill it up as an album.
Yeah.
And I think people fell out of love with spending that much money on an album, going, "There's 2 songs on it that I actually want to listen to. The rest of it's rubbish." And then when let's say when iTunes came along, or the first really big, probably iTunes really, where people could just say, well, I'll just download that one and that one. Never mind people doing it illegally and they download. I'm just when they're actually paying for it and go, I'll pay for that and that, but I've tested the others. No, thank you. And maybe that's kind of
my 16-year-old kids have never bought any music in their life.
Right.
But I make them pay for their own, but they've got streaming service.
Right. Okay.
They use Spotify.
Right.
But they don't own any music. It's amazing. They've never owned anything.
I know, but I'm not fazed by that.
No, they just rent it basically, or Spotify, or stream it off Spotify.
Yeah,
so
but also
it's really
because
interesting.
The one thing that I used to really like doing when we had dinner parties, we lived in Richmond for about 10 years, and our kitchen was in the downstairs, and we had a dining table down. It was just a really relaxed sort of thing. But we had rather, because most of them were my wife's probably, we had about 2,000 CDs in alphabetical order.
Yeah.
So we'd have a dinner party, and I'd just say, knock yourselves out, It was a mess the day after, the tidying up of CDs I had to do. But anyway, people would just go over and random pick something, because you couldn't stream it, you couldn't even do it, like, doing it on a computer I don't even think was,
Yep.
So you had to go and get a CD, put it in and play it. And what I loved about it also was the visual and the colour of it. And obviously, people who had vinyl, that was probably even more of an experience. But just that thing of seeing all of that, and if you had a bit of a knowledge of, any kind of music, you could go to that 2,000 CDs, and there's quite a variety in there. And it was quite a fun thing for people to go, oh, have you got, and go along and find it.
Yeah.
And you still do that by tapping and finding.
Yeah.
But it's not quite the same physical thing.
No.
But I know.
You don't all. One of the greatest nights of my life. I've mentioned this a few times in my podcast. So I'll do it again. I went to a charity do, and Suggs was Manis played there, and Suggs at the end of it night went, "Do you want to come back to mine?" I went, "Yep." So we stopped off at a shop, bought a load of beer, went back to his. His wife was away, and there was me, him, and 4 other blokes. He went downstairs to his basement. He got out his vinyl, and he was just playing. We were all around and he was going, choose a record, go on, choose something. And he was just playing old ska.
Right, brilliant.
And because it's vinyl, it had cracks,
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And it was just amazing.
Yeah, I'll bet.
A couple of beers and some ska and some music. We're all dancing, like a load of blokes just dancing. And it was just brilliant because it's kind of like going back in time. Absolutely, that you can't get that thing.
And also with
vinyl. Yeah,
it is I read his autobiography a couple of years back. And
who Suggs?
Yeah,
he's
and
great.
Really interesting actually. And I had no idea. I mean, why would I? But I mean, his teenage years, being in Soho a lot as well, and the way that he describes London then, and it was just really, really interesting. And so I can picture what you're saying, having read his book and what have you, kind of thinking.
I did a podcast with him, and he said some amazing things on the podcast. If you've not heard it and you're listening to this, listen to the podcast with Suggs, because he's got brilliant stories, hasn't he? He's amazing. Right, back to you. And just talking about my 16-year-old daughters again, I said Rick Astley's coming on the podcast, and they went, Rick Astley, that's amazing.
Crazy.
Right, 16-year-old kids.
Wow. Okay.
Right, so. He's a meme. That's what they say. And then I went Rickrolling. They went, no idea what that is, but he's a meme. And that's it. And I said, "What do you know what Rickrolling is?" I said, "No idea."
Great. Oh, let's skip to that. Yeah.
Rickrolling, because they're 16. Rickrolling was 10 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I know.
So they have no idea what that
is.
Weird.
And
it's you, but you're still a meme. So you're still something for that generation from that song, which was so. But what I love about you, you've embraced it, haven't you?
Yeah. What I've tried to do is be realistic about it as well, and kind of say, well, it could have been anybody. So just, you know what I mean, just treat it as a bonus, which it has been.
Yeah.
Because obviously, just the fact that your kids know my name and know that tune, even if it's only that one tune, to try and get that to happen with the amount, because we're talking about the worldwide, music kind of thing that's enormous about all the records in the world. And your girls know, I know they know others, but I'm saying they know that one.
No, but they genuinely
went,
why is he doing your podcast? He's really famous. I mean, it's like, that's kind of where they see you as a Matt, well, you were, and you still are, but a worldwide star. But that's been so huge for
it's
you.
Kind of, it has. And it also has done some things for me that we did a festival in Japan, so I ended up singing with the Foo Fighters on stage, because they just invited me up. And I'm not saying they did it because of Rickrolling or because I'm a meme. It was part of their plot anyway, I think, that they just get people up. You know what I mean? They're always getting someone on stage and what have you. And they saw my name on the list. They used Never Gonna Give You Up to protest against this church that they had this ongoing battle with, really. So they had Rickrolled this church anyway. So they were aware of the song, obviously. But I had no idea they were kind of that aware of it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so anyway, on the second night when we were in Tokyo, we were up at the side of the stage with a few of the other bands. Royal Blood were there and various other people who played at the festival. And it's quite an eclectic festival because obviously I'm on it as well. But and Dave Grohl came over and, basically then invited me on stage. And so we sang Never Gonna Give You Up, but we did a Foo Fighter version of it, if you know what I mean. A bit like It Smells Like Teen Spirit version.
It's on YouTube, that.
Yeah, and it's just...
Watch it. It's
and
brilliant.
So therefore I kind of think... I wouldn't have had moments like that, which I'll never ever forget, obviously, and neither will the band and the crew and everyone who works with me, because it was a mad. But things like I'm not saying they wouldn't possibly have done that, but I might not have even got invited to Japan to be on the festival. I sometimes feel it's the sum of a lot of things that happen to make a career. Do you know what I mean? So for me to get a go again at making new records and getting the offers that I'm getting for things, it's a bit of everything. Yes, I had the old hits, and that's, but lots of people have had hits from the 80s.
Yeah.
You need other things to just remind people or put you in a different window, if you like. So if that song has done that on the internet, then I'm grateful for it.
Have you ever analysed why that song?
No, I literally think it was quite random. I think he wanted a cheesy 80s video with a pop tune that, all right, had been a big hit and everything, but I think it was just a random choice,
What, the Rickrolling?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. And also, I think that keeps me slightly sane.
But why does it appeal to my 16-year-old daughters as well as all us lot back in the 80s?
I don't know. That's a question you've got to ask them. I don't know. That's the thing with certain things within pop culture, isn't it? You can't explain certain things. And certain things like... That's the other thing that's weird, is how something is just the uncoolest thing in the world, and give it a few years, and then people go, whoa, no, that is the coolest thing in the world. Whether it's, I don't know, can't think of a... Miami Vice, for instance, was probably really cool when it was out for people, and then it just becomes, oh my God, and then people start saying, oh no, that's the coolest show. That, when you go back to,
I
maybe
think
I've
it's
used a bad example there, but something that, goes in and out of fashion.
I think it's your voice. I think it's... I haven't spent a lot of time analysing this, but I think it's because your voice is very soulful, and yet it's on a sort of pop record.
Right.
I think that combination maybe is what works and captures the imagination so much.
Yeah. I don't know.
Your career now is amazing, isn't it? So you had a little time off, and then you went back.
I had a lot of time off.
You had a lot. You retired at 27.
27, 28, yeah, something like that, yeah.
But you had enough money to survive.
I did, and I wasn't. I mean, I've been pretty sensible with money. I know it sounds really boring to hear somebody, was in music saying sensible, but I just didn't go bonkers. I mean, I did buy a big, pop star buys a big house in the country. We went out there for a couple of years, and now I think we'd quite like living there, but at the time we were just too young. It was just like, what are we doing here, And my wife really, her career took off a little more in terms of, she's a film producer, and she got more and more into that. And it was kind of like, well, being out there just didn't make any sense. We were out in Gloucestershire in the Cotswolds, and it's beautiful, and I love it out there. And we've got friends out there, and we go and, hang out there a bit. It's lovely. But I think when you're in your late 20s, it's just too early to do that, I think. But I was trying to buy a bit of peace and quiet, I think, when we bought that house. It had not land, but it had a few acres, and you could sort of be a bit self-contained there. And I thought, well, I'll set up a studio and all this, that, and the other. This is when I was still making records back then. And we just kind of decided it wasn't for us, really. And so we moved back to London, and,
and your wife's your manager, isn't she?
She is now. She's been for about 5 years,
Is she pushy?
She's strong, is what she is. She's Danish, and Danish women are... I think the world's caught up a bit, to be honest, but when Lena and I met, quite a few decades ago, I think Danish women, I was quite almost taken aback by how equal things were there.
Scandinavia, a lot of equality.
And I kind of really... Well, obviously, I thought that was pretty amazing, to be honest. And I think we've caught up a lot. Obviously, the rest of the world's caught up to Scandinavia in certain things along those lines.
Have you learned to speak Danish?
Jeg taler en lille smule dansk, which is I speak a little bit of Danish. Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah. I understand a lot more than they think I do. That's the important bit.
My friend has married a Norwegian woman, and she said, I will only marry you if you learn how to speak Norwegian.
Wow.
Because why should I have to speak all the time in
has he
English?
done it?
Yeah. So it's like such a small language to
Do
learn.
they live
really.
here?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They live here.
I'm impressed with that.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And
that is impressive.
He had to go to night school to learn. That's the thing. And she wanted equality in the language and everything, but they've got a kid who speaks both languages now. So.
And I mean, I take my hat off. It's a hard thing to do, to learn a language also that is spoken by so few people. Because obviously Spanish, you can be on holidays, most of South America and various places around the world, you're going to hear a lot of Spanish. So it's a lot more, even if, I don't know, Spanish is just much a global language. I don't know if it's the most spoken or second or whatever it is, but I mean, but Norwegian, Danish, it's tiny,
In parts of America, it's becoming the number one spoken language. So then, just going through this lovely, I hate to use the word, but journey.
Yeah,
like you're an X Factor or something. Journey. It's great that the Rickrolling kind of got you back, but then you decided you'd written some other stuff, hadn't you, in your retirement years?
Yeah, I'd done bits and bobs, and funnily enough, I did an album once for Polydor in Germany with an understanding they'd only release it in Germany just so I could feel what it felt like again. It didn't really work, to be honest, and I just didn't want to do it really, and which is a bit unfair towards them, maybe, I don't know, but. We gave it a go, and I still wasn't in the mood. I don't think I wasn't in the right headspace to do it. I don't think, and it didn't work anyway. So it's fine.
So you wrote a new album.
Yeah.
How many years after Rickrolling was that you started working on that album?
It's got to be, I don't know, 8 to 10 years, something. I'm not sure exactly of the dates and everything. But because when I turned 50, I'm 52 now. When I was about to turn 50, the year up to that, I decided I'd make a record. But I wasn't making a record. I was making some songs, and somehow I was going to let my fans hear them. I didn't know what the rules were going to be. I didn't know whether I wasn't going to go to a record label. I made the record at home, wrote it, I played all the instruments, produced it, did everything. Had a great engineer friend of mine mix it and what have you, came and recorded some of the things with me, but I basically did everything. And I think under those terms, that's why I was really comfortable doing it. Because at any moment I could say, no, I'm not doing this. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if you sign a deal, and also if a record label signs somebody like me because they go, but he sold millions back in the day, if we just get 5-10% of that, we'll be, and we must be able to get him on TV because like he's this dude who's in these internet things. That's the last thing I wanted. I wanted to make a record, play it possibly to someone, and if they liked it enough to release it, then great, we go for it. I want them to hear the music first and do it for that reason. Do you know what I mean? So they were really great about it. I went back to the label I used to be with, BMG, and they kind of set about it with Lena, my wife, obviously, who managed me and, is a strong woman. They set about making a great campaign and hiring the right people to help and all the rest of it. And but I made the record in isolation, if you like, saying, I'm doing this for me, and obviously I'll stick it on the net somehow. I'll make it available to fans if they want it, but I'm kind of doing it for me, really, to mark being 50, to say that's what I'm capable of at 50 years old, after messing around with music, here and there, or through a long period of time, and doing gigs again for like 10 years.
Yeah.
So
So I forgot to write down how many it sold, but it went platinum, didn't it?
It went platinum. Yeah, we've sold. Platinum these days is 300,000, I think, in this country, which just stopped there for a second. I mean, I was expecting to get them produced locally as a CD, and literally possibly sell them at gigs, or maybe put them on the internet on Amazon or what have you. And maybe make it available to download, obviously. But I was literally expecting to do something like that. It was kind of a sort of, instead of buying, I've said this so many times, instead of buying a Harley or a soft top and driving across America, which I've already done, by the way, I would do that as a midlife crisis. I'd make a record.
Right.
That would be my kind of like, and I called it 50. Genuinely, I called it 50 because I'd seen, obviously, and loved Adele Kohler albums, 19, 21, 25, and thought, on the one hand, that's an amazing thing because her kids, herself, what I will be able to look back and go, that's what I did at that age. That's what I had to give at that age. That's what's going through my heart and through my mind. Yeah. And I kind of thought, well, I can do that because no one's going to hear mine. No one's going to see it. So I can call mine 50 and it won't matter. If she's still making records at that point, I've not interfered with her, 30, 40, 50. That's not a problem. And then, lo and behold, we saw my title 50 next to 25 in the chart.
Unbelievable.
Bonkers, proper bonkers. So, yeah, I'm not apologising to Adele. She doesn't need to even know I've made a record. That's fine. I'm just sort of saying that, like, I wasn't doing it as a mick take. Right. I was doing it as a sort of, like, I loved what she did with that. And I just thought, I'm going to call my album 50. And no, it's not going to be in Music Week.
What's it like then, second time round? To
amazing. And amazing for lots of kind of reasons that I didn't have the first time, which is that I've lived a bit.
Did you do a bit of running around the house going, God, I'm selling records?
It was in the build-up to it, because now obviously with pre-orders, people can pre-order. Yeah. And the label were kind of going, this is going really well, And I'm like, great. Not really understanding what they meant by that. And then obviously it used to be you'd get a midweek. So on a Wednesday, I think it was, you'd understand roughly where you were up to that week. But now they're getting it like every 10 minutes, I think. They can almost track. Mrs. Jones has bought an album from 33 whatever Gardens, And so we kind of knew that it was going to do really well. And then in the last few days of it, it was either going to be number one or number two. Tom Adele was going to be number one or number two. And it was a race to the finish kind of thing. And I didn't get involved in that because it's not my job. I don't do any of that. But all the guys were like, doing everything they could to make it a number one album, and buying the right adverts and doing everything they do, because there's a whole raft of people who are behind giving you a number one album. It's not just the record, it's everybody who works on it. And that's, again, is something I'm a lot more aware of, I think. I knew it then. I definitely knew it then because I was around Waterman. So I knew that there was a business and what went on. but I know the people at the record company a bit better now. You know what I mean? In terms of like, the first time it just happened, and I had to go and kind of find out where was the record label, who worked there. Whereas this time we've been a bit more involved, you know.
Did Pooh Waterman give you a call?
Yeah.
Kid,
No,
you've done great.
Yeah, no, he did. He did. And Mike Stock, I met him at Kylie's 50th this year, and we had a bit of a hug and a chat. And funnily enough, he and Jason and I were having a natter for a good like half hour or more. Jason Donovan. Sorry, sorry. I've just been first name terms there. And it was just funny because literally to see them two together in a room was a bit like, you know what I mean? That was a bit odd, you know, because I haven't seen Mike Stock for a long time. Not since back in the day, not like 25 years, but it's a long time. But Waterman, Pete, I see every year.
What did he say when he phoned you though?
Pete was very much, I think, he always kind of felt that I could have had a bigger career than I had, I think.
Right.
He said that a few times.
Okay.
And I think he also kind of understood that it just wasn't for me, really. I think also because I was one of those British artists. Bands do it a lot. And the odd solo artist, obviously, you know, Adele, Sam Smith, they've been massive in America as solo artists. So, and others as well, obviously. But not many people from Britain who are doing pop music, let's say, tend to sort of get away with it in America. They just kind of shut up shop and go, we're okay, we've got enough of that, thanks. And I don't know, I got in there and it happened. You know, we had a couple of number ones straight off the bat. Top 10 records after that and stuff. So I think even Pete looked at that occasionally and kind of went, this is a bit more than normal. This has gone a bit loopy, you know. Yeah, it's kind of amazing, really.
So you've written another album, which is out now, the Beautiful Life. I was watching you do some PR the other day on TV, and they were going, so when you wrote Never Gonna Give You Up, and you went, I didn't write it, didn't have anything to do with it, just sung it, but this is all your work, this is all you writing. It must in a way feel a lot nicer because there's
more connection in lots of ways, because you know, it's not like digging ditches, but you do graft to make a record. There's a lot of hours go into it. There's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of, you know, it's a bit of turmoil to go through it. Sometimes it just happens and you go, boom, how did that happen? We've got a song, it's happening, the lyrics are almost all there, it just happens. But then after that, the actual making it into a record, that takes a bit of time, because unless you're really lucky, that's when the kind of production thing comes into it, you know what I mean? And it just takes time. Like I'm sure any kind of creative endeavor does, do you know what I mean? The initial outburst is like, oof, we've got something, and then you've got to hone it. But obviously with the Stock Aitken Waterman songs, Never Gonna Give You Up, Together Forever, I did basically just sing them, you know. I didn't really do it. But so did Whitney with her songs. So did Frank Sinatra.
Elvis.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, I think since the Beatles, let's say, artists have been a bit more, pop artists have been a bit, in rock obviously, have been a bit more expected to do a bit of everything and do it themselves. And I think on the one hand, that's why we ended up with David Bowie and Kate Bush and various, you know, artists that have just changed the face of music, because it literally is coming from them. And their mad, crazy, wonderful ideas don't get filtered. They just say, no, I'm doing, you know that book, Wuthering Heights?
Yeah.
Yes, Kate. Well, do you know what I mean? And there's no one to say, you can't do that, love. We're going to have to water that way down. Do you know what I mean? It's just, that's it. That's happening. And
that is nuts. Do you think Kate Bush would the original Kate Bush, do you think that would hit the charts now? Do you think anyone would buy into that? I mean,
I actually think it would, if I'm honest.
You?
And I do think I do actually think there are possibly the equivalent version of that in today's world, if you know what I mean, with certain artists.
Right.
I'm trying to think of one right now, but I'm thinking about the French girl who did Tilted.
Christine and the Queen. I interviewed her on Sunday.
You did?
Yeah, she was on Sunday.
Oh,
Brunch.
amazing!
She was so brilliant because she's
like a concept artist.
Oh, unbelievable!
She's like something else. That's what I think Kate Bush is. She says, look, this isn't just this song. Maybe she's not thinking that way, but when I went to see one of the gigs she did at Hammersmith, and it's just, I mean, talk about. She just takes you into her world for an evening or through a record and says, "This is my world. You're invited in," and that's a different. I mean, I went to a lot of prog, not a lot, but I went to some prog rock gigs when I was a kid because my sister took me to them. That was my first gig ever, was a band called Camel with flute solos and everything, you know what I mean? But for me, it was just amazing because it was like, that's a total trip. It's an adventure. You're invited into the world of Yes and Topographic
Yeah.
Oceans or whatever it was. It's a concept, you know. So
You're touring now as well. You've
Yeah.
got loads of. Do you enjoy the touring?
I do.
It must be amazing.
To be honest, it's almost a relief to go on tour because you forget about your wheelie bins, you know, and you know I love a wheelie bin, and you forget about.
Can I just say, by the way, it was really interesting when you get told who's coming on the show.
Right.
We get Rick Astley's coming on the show, you go brilliant. It's and I think that's
Thank you.
due to that's one of the reasons you've been so successful second time round because everyone knows you and everyone knows you're nice and everyone knows what a massive star you were back then and all that and I think that I don't think it was pretty hard for them to book you onto shows, was
Right.
it? Do you think?
I mean, the guys have told me it wasn't. No, but I think
We were like, brilliant, Rick Astley's coming on. We got excited by it.
Thank you. But I do also think that human beings, we like a story and we like a comeback underdog story.
Yeah.
We do. And that's what my story is right now. It's kind of like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
I thought he was dead. Do you know what I mean?
Well, according to the internet, you did die.
Yeah, I
didn't you,
did
for a while?
die. Yeah, possibly. Yeah. I've got to be honest, that's the worst one. That's the worst thing, I think, out of any of the crazy things that have been rumoured or said or what have you. Because obviously, you know, my reaction is, oh, what's my mum going to do? You know, because my mum's, you know, of an age and she's not going to relate to that. She's just going to think, well, is he? Do you know what I mean? So I had to call her straight away and say, look, it's all cool and it's fine. And none of my other family members are going to think that. They're just going to think, oh, it's just some stupid idiot saying something on the internet. But your mum doesn't, does she? Do you know what I mean? So I could have done without that one that day, I must say. But no, but it is. I think there's been a bit of empathy as well. I think people have gone, yeah, I like the idea of that, doing something again when you're 50 and going, how about that?
Yeah.
You know, because I think we'd all like to relive some part of our earlier life. And for a lot of us, there is no other way of doing it because athletes, sports people can't do it. You can do it in a five-a-side sort of way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't go and play for United or Chelsea again. That cannot happen. You can't do it.
I think
Music, you can.
I think one of the keys to showbiz though is being nice. I really do think. I really do
I'm
think
getting
that.
a T-shirt with that on it.
I do
The key
think.
to show business is being nice.
Jenny's producing today. We're just having a chat about
Jen.
we've got Slaves coming on, we've got Sleaford Mods coming on here soon, and all that sort of stuff. And it's funny because talking about Slaves coming on Sunday brunch, they're just really nice. And I remember interviewing Tim Minchin. Do you know Tim Minchin?
Yeah.
And I was really nervous because he's so edgy. And at the end of the show, I went to him, Tim, thanks so much. He was brilliant. He was funny.
Is he known to be a bit edgy then, is he?
Well, his act is. So I was like, I was really worried about what he was in. He's very political, isn't he? All that sort of stuff. And I thought, oh, as a presenter, you've always got to be careful of swearing and all that.
Yeah.
He was so nice. He was so kind. He was just a dream guest.
Yeah.
And I said, Tim, thanks so much. I thought you'd be really edgy. And he said, my act's edgy. I don't have to be.
Oh, right.
And I just thought,
interesting.
That's really good. If you've got an
He's
edgy
clever.
act.
He's a bit of a dude, though, isn't he? He's clever, that guy. I mean, he's I heard him do Desert Island Discs.
Oh, I've not heard that one.
And I'm a big fan of that anyway. And I was quite moved by some of the things he said as well. And it just, I don't know. I think certain people, have a way about them that you kind of. There's just something kind of solid about them that you kind of think they don't have to try that hard. I think, you know what I mean. Some people would probably come on your show and kind of like go, "I've got to take every bit of oxygen possible to further my career." Yeah. And other people are going, well, it's okay, I'm comfy. I'm going to just do what I would do as a human being.
That's it.
You know?
The worst ones who come on are the ones who want to be edgy.
Yeah.
And, I'm rock and roll or something, I'm going to be edgy because the viewers just don't like it.
No.
The viewers just be nice. Just be nice. Look, I'm really conscious of the time. Are you right for another 5-10 minutes?
Of course I am.
Because I wanted just to talk about touring there because we got into it and then we just I moved you off it. You love going out. There must be the best bit, doing the gigs, doing the touring.
I think obviously the highlight of anybody's career is actually playing in front of people because you get to actually you get that thrill, the chemicals in your body just going mad, the natural ones that is are going mad and kind of like, it really is a high, I think. I mean, you must have it as well. You going on live TV.
Yeah,
it's like,
love it.
What we have, which is unbelievable, is we have an audience that we can actually literally work with. You can ask them to do stuff, and generally speaking, they do it with you, i.e. sing along, clap along, diddle-a-da, someone screams something out, so you have an interaction with them. So every night it is, there's a formula to it. We come on, we play the songs, we do the bigger ones at the end, we go off. But everything else is a bit different every night because it just is. And I think also it's that thing that you sort of feel validated. I do. I feel like, yeah, I'm good at this. They all went home happy, and that makes me feel better.
Yeah.
And it's not like I've got a big dark black hole in me that I need to fill. I used to feel that a little bit as a kid, to be honest. I felt like, I think I might have said this to you, that my mum and dad divorced when I was really young. They had a son who'd passed away, which I haven't spoken a lot about because I didn't think it was relevant. But as I've got older, I think it's very relevant actually of the way. Good afternoon. the way that I have kind of sort of reacted and dealt with certain things. I think about thinking about my mum and dad and why they divorced and everything. And obviously things they must have gone through, just like I can't even get my head around losing a child and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And this is before I was born.
Right.
And I think music definitely did do that for me. It definitely filled a lot of space that I wanted to fill, if you know what I mean. But doing it live on stage after all these years, and it still takes care of a lot of things for me in terms of making me feel valid. It makes me think, yeah, I've got a place in the world because they've just told me I have. And I know you can't live your life by that. You've got to tell yourself that. I'm aware of all those things, but it's pretty nice when they do.
How different is it from when you used to tour years ago? When you started out, were you drinking every night and doing all that sort of
No, I wasn't a big I mean, I used to drink with my mates like anybody would, you know, but when I actually, you know, became professional and actually went out on a proper tour and everything, I didn't drink at all.
Right.
But I was also surrounded by a couple of people who were teetotal, not because they had a problem, they just never drunk. My manager, who was with me day in, day out, is my road manager at first and became a manager, never had a drink in his life. So there was never a temptation between us two. We'd go to the bar, he'd have a Coke, I'd have a beer or a glass of wine, and then that'd be it. Because if you're not with someone who's having another beer, you don't have another beer, do you?
Yeah.
Some people do, but I just didn't. And I do drink now in terms of socially, and I really enjoy a beer, obviously, and a glass of wine and the rest of it. But if I'm working, I try really, really hard not to drink because I don't want that feeling of thinking my voice isn't on it tonight, and I think I know why. I think it's because I was in the bar last night. You know what I mean? I don't want to have that because you can go out. Funnily enough, I think it's who's the captain? No, he's not captain. Plays for Liverpool, midfielder. English guy, really good. I don't
know which one you're going for.
Anyway, it'll come back to me. He's been around for quite a while. I remember reading an interview with him saying, I can drink when I'm older.
Yeah.
I want to play every game and feel it and mean it, and, you know. And I just thought, wow, with all due respect to footballers, that's not the kind of what we grew up thinking. Do you know what I mean? It was more a bit the other way of like, you know, let's party and, you know, we'll be all right for the game at the weekend kind of thing.
James Milner.
Yeah, James Milner. Yeah. Who's like, it seems like a really solid guy anyway. But I just remember him saying that and just thinking, wow, and this is a few years ago, so it's quite an old head on young shoulders.
He gets hammered, James Milner, doesn't he?
Does he?
Yeah, they call him Boring James. There's a Twitter site called Boring James
Milner.
Milner and stuff like that.
Good player though.
Because I suppose that's it. He's solid. He's doing his job.
Yeah, but you know, it might become a tearaway when he retires. You know what I mean? But I can appreciate the fact that he realises how privileged that position is, and I'm not saying I'm anywhere near that level of that sort of you know that world or anything, but it's just I want to treat it with respect.
One of my favourite interviews I've ever done is Vidal Sassoon. Love that guy. He made such an impact on me. But one of the things I asked him, I said, what was it like back in the 60s, all the hedonism and all that? It must have been amazing, all the girls and the drink and the drugs. He said, I used to go home and go to bed. And I went, what? And he goes, yeah, I used to go and go. He said, I had this vision of being like massive in the world. And he said, you can't do that if you're always drunk and hungover and stuff.
Wow, really?
And he said, all the ones who used to do all the drinking and the drugs, he said they're either poor or dead. And he said, I'm still going.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was really interesting what he said there. He made his mind up that he wanted to dedicate himself to his career, which is basically what you're saying. So.
Well, funnily enough, going back to the young guy Harvey you had on the show, I think he said that. Do you remember we were all, because we were tasting the drinks.
Yeah.
Which I really love about your show, by the way. I think it's just a really interesting thing that you have someone come on, and it was, I think we were doing punches. I think last time, and he said, "Well, I don't drink," and to hear a young guy say that is a bit like, "You what?" He's like, "Well, I don't really drink, you know." And then I don't know if you remember, he said, "Well, I want to focus on my career. I'll drink, you know." And it's that same thing with James Milner. I'll drink later. I'll do all that later.
So I'm looking at your tour: Glasgow, Hull, Manchester, Gateshead, Plymouth, Cardiff, Brighton. You're doing London, Bournemouth, Nottingham, Birmingham, Leeds, Liverpool. Are you going to Europe at all?
We are. We start in Europe next week, actually. We start in Munich on Thursday, and I think the last gig is Madrid. And we go up and down a bit in that. We're going to Denmark, obviously, as well. And
do you end up going down to Australia as well and places
we
like
haven't
that?
got this time. We might do next year. We're still we're kind of talking to. Obviously, we have an agent, and he talks to everybody.
Yeah.
But we're just talking to people about it. I've been to Australia a couple of times in the last few years, but
right.
Yeah,
so
we haven't got any plans
So has it
right
taken
now.
off everywhere for you again?
The album, we haven't had the success with the album because, in a nutshell, it's almost impossible for me to get on the radio because I'm old. And once you're old, they won't let you on the radio. But thankfully, we have Radio 2 and other stations that will actually play music from people who are under the age of 25. Over the age, sorry, 25, yeah.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm saying that like I've got a gripe about it. I actually genuinely don't. I kind of think that's the way it should be to a great degree. Pop music, real pop music, is a young person's sort of thing, really. I'm not saying that, Duran Duran can't make a great record, whoever can't make a great, because of course they can. But I'm sort of saying, how do you fit that into that? Do you know what I mean? Which is the thing of right now and today. So there's definitely a place for the older kids to make records, but you have to leave it to the young kids to do the top.
But can't you just turn up and do all TV stuff like you did with us, sort of thing? I mean, all over the
Yeah,
world.
you can do, obviously, and I do
Do you
stuff
go to
like,
America now? or not?
yeah, we've toured in America. In fact, we were there in May doing a tour, and the gigs go well, and we do all of that. But I'm just talking about America's a classic example. Obviously, they've got really big TV shows you can go on, the big talk shows and stuff. But unless you've really got radio in America hammering away, it's still really, really, really tough. Because I just think however, I don't know. It's a tough old world, and you've got to have all guns blazing, I think, to actually have a real hit, So, yeah.
Do you mind if I just ask you the questions I ask everyone who comes
Absolutely.
on my show? What one piece of advice would you like to give our listeners that has been invaluable to your life, Rick?
If you're going into the music business, get a good lawyer and a good accountant.
How have you done on that? Have
Really
you done
well.
all right? Yeah.
I'm good mates with both my lawyer and my
good.
accountant.
All right.
I don't see enough of either of them, to be honest, which is probably a good thing, actually. But yeah.
Okay, that's good advice. What's the biggest mistake you've made?
The funny thing is, I know it's so corny, this, but I don't think of them as mistakes, because I think sometimes your mistakes turn into the things that gave you a certain opportunity or stopped you doing something, which would have even been worse. So I just view it as, I'm really happy where I am. So whatever seemed like a mistake maybe might not have been. So I just don't really even see it like that.
Retiring at 27 might be a mistake.
Yeah, there you go. But
any life hacks?
Funnily enough, I think this thing about. Do you mean like an exercise thing or something?
Or
like that?
or a travel thing or whatever you want. Like a hack.
Yeah, I think for me, because sometimes people will compliment me and say, "Oh, you don't look the age you are," and all the rest of it, which I take as a huge compliment because I feel it. Believe me. I think I walk a lot, and I kind of think in a bizarre way, sometimes for certain people that's better than actual real exercise.
Yeah.
Because some people I don't think have got the body for real exercise after a certain age.
Yeah.
And yet they still push themselves to do it. Then they get injured, then they can't do anything. You know what I mean? Like they go, "Oh, well, I can't actually walk at the moment." Oh, right, okay, I'm a bit more in the kind of like walk-ins. Just do walking for now. You know
My
what I mean?
granddad's lived well into his 90s, and he used to always say to me, "Get out of the sun. It's really bad to be in the sun." This was all during the 80s. I just think, "What's he talking about, idiot?" And then he used to always say to me, "All that exercise you do is not good for you," because I've always been obsessed with exercise. And he goes, and he used to just walk every day.
Right.
Exactly.
Well,
But he lived forever, but he ate really boring food as well.
Okay.
he would,
Just eat lettuce.
Yeah, just eat. No, it was meat and 2 veg. He ever ate.
Right.
That was it. He wouldn't eat anything else. So that's a good bit of advice, though. Any books you recommend, or a book?
I'm a big fan of autobiographies. Really big fan. I'll listen to a lot of audiobooks because of travelling and what have you. Because I do a lot of the driving myself because I like it. And I just listened to *Sapiens*, which is have you heard that?
Yeah, that's a good book.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of information.
Yeah.
My word,
It's hard
great
to take
book,
in. Yeah.
really good book.
What's it like being famous?
It's amazing. It's just not amazing on the odd occasion when you don't want to be. Like if you just want to sit there. I've been in a couple of situations where somebody, a really good friend, has been really pouring their heart out to me about something that's really like, they're really, do you know what I mean? And someone's come over and just said, just do a quick selfie, mate. And you're like, well, yeah, but, and you can see this person just literally, the air just go out of them, and you just think, oh, I just wish I could have just delayed that in some way. Do you know what I mean?
I get.
Because you want to be in the moment with somebody, and it's like selfies with me in the middle of them telling me. So it's just a bit like, you know.
I hate driving in London.
Oh, right. Okay.
I hate it, right? And I used to have Vespers, but I have 5 Vespers stolen in 18 months.
Oh my God!
They steal them all because they go from
Right.
whatever. So I refuse to have those anymore. So I get everywhere on the tube, right? And generally, I always forget that someone might recognise me.
All right.
And the other day, it was, and I think people in London just leave you alone. I think that's generally what happens.
Yeah, there's a bit more of that.
Generally, and the other day there was a rugby league thing going on. And this
Is
guy,
this the final at Wembley, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
right,
This guy's on the
Warrington,
tube, and this bloke's walked over and gone, "It is 2 minutes," like that. I said, "Yeah." And he sat next to me, talked to me, really lovely bloke. I've got to say, really lovely. Talked to me all about his kids and everything. They come down from St Helens or somewhere like that.
It's Warrington, Warrington it was.
Yeah, no, but he'd come down. They'd come down to what? It wasn't their team.
Oh.
They'd come down. They were St Helens fans, but they'd come down to watch the final.
Oh, right, okay.
Because they like coming to watch the final.
Yeah.
It was against Castle.
It was
against
the French team.
Catalan. Catalan Dragons,
yeah.
So he's telling me all about it and everything else. We're having this really big chat, and I loved it because he got up. I got off from my station. He got up, and I watched him, and he walked over to his mates and goes, "Nah, it wasn't him. It was a lookalike."
That's fantastic. I love it.
And I just thought that was absolutely brilliant because he sat with me for
ages.
It's got to be 6 or 7 stops. I was sitting there talking
That's
to
fantastic.
him. It's great.
No,
okay. No, it wasn't him. It was a lookalike. What's the meaning of life?
Oh man, if we knew that. You know what? I've just done a thing with. I played at the Palladium with the BBC Concert Orchestra, and my old songs have been orchestrated and all of it. It was just an amazing night, brilliant. And we did a couple of old songs, which I've covered once, and enjoy doing so. But we did a song called Nature Boy, and there's a line in Nature Boy, and the greatest gift you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. And I just think that encapsulates everything in life. The greatest gift you will ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. Because a lot of people go through life almost kind of refusing to be loved as well. Do you know what I mean? They fight it a lot, and they're kind of like, just let it happen. Do you know what I mean? If somebody wants to,
Do you have to start by loving yourself, do you think? I think that's...
Yeah, I definitely, absolutely. And like I was kind of hinting at before, well, I wasn't hinting, I was going into before this thing of, like, I think I wanted to, I don't know, fill some gaps in my life, I think, through music, if you know what I mean, and find some moments in life that were going to, and you suddenly realise that's not really going to do it. It still feels great while it's happening, which is one of the most amazing things when you're on stage and doing those things or having a hit record. But the only real true happiness that anyone's going to find definitely is, it's a cliche, but it is from within, isn't it? Nobody else is going to make you feel that. They do temporarily, but you've got to feel it yourself, I think, definitely, yeah.
I've been asking a few people recently, especially ones who come on who are religious, if there's an afterlife. So I might as well ask you, is there an afterlife?
I don't think there is. I mean, as I'm getting older, I'd like to start believing in a lot of things, I think, but I don't think there is necessarily. But then again, I do look at certain things in life and certain times when a baby's been born immediately after somebody's lost somebody. It might not be their baby, but just in a fact, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A connection. It's almost like, how did that, the synchronicity of that happening has sort of fulfilled something in their life, and have they wished that almost into their own life? Do you know what I mean? Or is that just a coincidence? You know what I mean? And I don't know. It's very. I think as humans, we need to believe in things. A lot of the songs on my last record, the 50 record, it sounded almost like I'm like that I have a faith in a religion, let's say, and all of that. And I don't necessarily, but I do have faith in us. I do have faith in our connected energy, if I'm honest. And that, I don't want to get all
No, I agree with you
worldly
totally,
spiritual.
yeah.
But I definitely,
Yeah.
and again, you can feel it if you're at the football or you're at a gig,
Yeah.
and everyone is willing something to happen. That's an enormous. Well, all you've got to do is say the home team. I'm not saying they always win, because if you're the home team and Man City are coming, you're up against it anyway. But it's amazing what it does. I think, and you watch boxers even when they fight on their own home turf, and you think there's no way, and you sort of think, well, yeah, that that Irish guy or that guy from Newcastle or whatever it is, they just managed to get the fight in their hometown and they won. And you think that if you put that down on paper, they wouldn't. And you think, well, is that because the will of the people around them, there's an energy in that. And also I do believe in things in terms of, when you're by the sea and you just feel better because there's a huge amount of energy in it. And I think with humans, it's even stronger. I definitely do. And also you can be in a room with certain people and just feel like they're a vacuum. They're just a vacuum cleaner taking up all the energy, and you just don't want to be in the room with them. And it's just,
I definitely think there's that thing, though, when you reach a certain age, and I think, sadly, we're obsessed with numbers, but that's the way we do it. We reach 50, I'm 50 now, and you reach your 50, it's a big number, isn't it?
It is.
Big number. And then you start going, wow, look at the world, and what am I, and who am I, and what's going on. And I think anyone out there who's in their 30s listening to this will be, wait till you hit 50, you're going, wow, what is the point of all this?
I think one of the age-old things about that simply is the fact that we are getting closer to when we won't be here anymore.
Yeah.
And therefore you start thinking, well, yeah, but there's an afterlife, isn't there? And there's this and there's that and all the rest of it. And also, what have I left? What is anybody going to remember me? There's a movie, Coco, I think it's called. It's an animated movie. It came out last year, I think. Our daughter's 26, but she still loves the animated movies, and we still watch them together when they come out. And it's all about it's the Mexican thing about if you're not remembered anymore, you don't exist, if you know what I'm saying. But if people remember you and they've got a photograph up of you, you still exist in the world. It might be the afterworld, but you still exist because you're remembered. And so if you're not remembered, and certainly if you're not remembered for doing anything good, then you just fade away. Do you know what I mean? So I think we all do subconsciously and consciously want to leave something. Yeah. I'm not talking about leaving records. I'm on about leaving a memory with people who you loved and loved you. You know what I mean? So
the way I see that is you sort of get to the age of 27, you disappear, and then one day people start Rickrolling. Next thing you know.
Thank heavens for the internet.
There you go. Oh, listen, Rick, thanks so much for doing this
Pleasure. Enjoyed
today.
it.
If you want to find out about tickets and album stuff, go to rickastley.co.uk.
Anywhere there. Just go internet and Rick Astley.
Rick Astley, that's it. Thank you so much. Best of luck with the tour, and I'll see you soon. Cheers,
Thank you.
Rick. Thank you.
Cheers. Good stuff.